why does learning change from something that is enjoyable, which can become a part of your life, which can increase your idea of, you know, checking the world around you, curiosity, these kind of things,
Mhm.
and then it has to become this quantifiable, measurable kind of system of gauging a person's growth when it comes to the teenage and the later years. When it comes to middle high school, you have to be tested on what you know. You have to kind of
Mhm.
show that this is what I've learned, and as a result this is kind of how I project that learning. And that the moment that happens, I feel, at least for me, many years back, there was that switch of, oh, it's no longer something that I can use in life when it comes to the point I might need it, but I have to show quick returns, and that automatically
Mhm.
changes the relationship with learning.
Mhm. Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, I wish there's so many things that I wish we would change about the education system. I would love to see more like apprenticeships. I would love to see more entrepreneurship in education, or at
Mm.
least entrepreneurial mindset really encouraged in the school, in the classroom. I would love to see permission for young people to explore a topic um, more deeply and fully. I think a lot of learning can come from that, uh, versus just this like you learn something and then you memorize it, and then for the test and then you don't remember it later on. So there's nothing about it that's you've gotten this great like immersive experience. And I think all of us as adults, that's how we like to learn, is like to get super immersed in something and then deep dive into something. And there's no time for a young person to do that. They're forced to go from subject to subject to subject, quiz, test. There's
Yeah.
and then where's the love of learning? And I think we should be cultivating, I think we should be helping create and build with these young people, contributing, people that are contributing members of society for sure, right? We want people that go out and know how to contribute to society and sustain themselves and be able to give back and all those things, and also like have a well-rounded knowledge base and not just this like little tiny bits of each little thing where there's like
Yeah.
nothing that's in depth. So, um,
And I feel the problem there is that we are creating these people whose mission statement, if you want to call it, is giving to society, or rather being productive members of society. But many of them aren't content as individuals, because of they don't know their own value systems, because they're all constantly being pressurized to be someone else or be a certain version of a human being that society accepts or needs. And that's just, you can't go on for too long, right? Or you become dejected, or you become stressed, as we see. So
mhm,
and that's something you mentioned, when you spoke about your peer group, is, and that's something I resonate with strongly, is I'm glad that I didn't have this much exposure to information and networking at my in my teenage years, or even my young adult years, because the word pressure is so important, right? Because whether it's the education system, the pressure starts building, right? You start becoming this product that has to go through the system, and you go to high school, then which high school, then which university, what did you study there,
mhm,
then when you come out, which job did you get, and then which how much did that job pay, and where are you at that job, and then if you add that now with the pressures of um, social media, I feel it's great tools, but it's also a lot of pressure of being seen, or where did you go on holiday, or what skills are you learning, because the information is there, and now there's no excuse to not use that information. So, like, and that's something I want to ask you, like, because it kind of ties in sweetly with what it takes. Maybe that's the second part of this, but maybe if you can address
mhm.
what we spoke about, is the pressure of the pressure that comes along with the internet and technology is very hard to digest for a mind that um, is quite, what's the word, easily influenced, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be two sides of the coin, right? I mean, I
Mm.
love that there is this great access to information, because how wonderful for a young person to be able to go online and build a website that's
Yeah, yeah,
about them, and or even do a skill they can get paid for from
yeah.
the comfort of their home. I mean, that's really cool. So I love that. I also think, gosh, if I was a parent, I'd be pretty diligent on the kind of access I was giving to my kids on what they
Yeah.
could, have search. But there's also, we all did different versions of that in our generations of like getting information that we weren't supposed to really get access to at a younger
Yeah.
age and those kind of things. So every generation has a version of that story. Just like now it's just a lot of access to things.
Mhm.
And then this call, then there's like request or expectation on a young person to self-regulate, which is so interesting that you give them something that's so addictive, the scrolling of Instagram and social media, and then you say, well, you'd have to learn how to just like regulate yourself in just 30 minutes a day. And like, that's it. And adults can barely do that. I have a time limit on my phone and it's almost like every day it says limit up. Do you want to bypass the limit? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And so then we're asking
I know
a
the same thing
teenager to
happened.
do
Like
that.
the screen time report, and one
Yes.
popped up on Sunday, and I'm like, "That's not me. I wasn't on that iPad for that long." And he's just in
Yeah.
denial. But one
Right.
YouTube after one thumbnail after, just clicking like a, God,
Yeah. It keeps. And so I think we got to be careful with how judgmental we're going to get with young
mm,
people when we all deal with that we're dealing with the same thing. But I do think that there's wonderful benefits for the access to resources and information for people around the globe that
mm,
before oh my gosh, I mean, it'd be so hard to get access to that type of information and resources and education. So I really see the
yeah.
benefits of it.
Yeah, earlier it
Uh,
would be like, especially, I remember a couple of instances, like you say you're interested in advertising or something. It wouldn't be, the access to some of the best, you know, information from some of like the stalwarts in that field. It would be, oh, my dad's friend's uncle was in
mhm.
advertising in 1945. Why don't you talk to him about your interests? And it would be,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would be good maybe, but very outdated stuff or very
Mhm.
irrelevant. But and sometimes you'd be kind of like, oh, you know what? I had an idea of what it might be, but it's totally because end of the day, it's coming with bias, but it's also coming with a little bit of their own kind of whether it's a perception that was influenced, something went right or wrong. So it's there's a lot of chance to how that information is coming across, but here it's a lot more unadulterated, depending on where you get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we also have to be careful too as adults getting down on the generation or the young people because we contributed to it. The things that we're complaining about
We
in young
created it,
people,
yeah.
like we allowed for it.
Yeah.
We built the systems that created it. We get upset that they're not learning valuable information in school, but we're adults are the ones that set up the school system and have
Mm,
allowed a broken system to continue. And then
yeah.
then they get upset with the product that comes out of that system. So you built the factory and now you're upset with the product that's coming out of the factory. And instead of going and fixing the factory, you're like getting mad at the product. It's like, what are
Mm,
you doing? Like your system is broken. And so go back and take the time to fix it. And they don't want to do that. They just don't. I mean, I used to be a school teacher, a public school teacher, and I advocated for change and I would speak at those hearings, those Senate hearings, and they would turn off my mic and it didn't matter because I have a loud voice anyway, and I would keep talking. But
mm,
even in that, statement of using my voice and trying to be heard, I wasn't. They didn't care. They still move things forward because you find out that the people that are the elected officials have been bought by the unions and by people. And so they're not going to go put the kid first. Like there's not. And anybody who's claiming that they put kids first is lying because I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, that's a broad statement. So I can only imagine somebody would write in or like comment on your podcast and say, well, my fifth grade teacher cares about kids. And so she does. And you're right. There are those, and as a whole, the system is broken and it's broken because adults have allowed it to be broken because they don't care enough about children.
and it's yeah, it's a bit not scary, but it's a bit sad to hear that. But it's the truth, like even you hear conversations now where in a emerging sort of economy with a lot of money and a lot of people who want, their children to get the best education. So you have all these schools, these international schools, curriculums that are coming in from wherever they come from, but it's still fundamentally, you might say, the the, the the programs, like, typically the traditional programs in India were different. They were called the ICSE, the CBSE, the state boards.
Mm-hmm.
But now, of course, you have the A levels program, then you have the IG program, wherever they but which is good. And then, of course, you have the Montessori systems. You have all these new things
Mm-hmm.
at a younger age. But the mindset is still broken. It's still the same. It's still the outcome based appreciation of why kids go to school. Okay, they might not go in uniform. Some of them might go. Oh, they had yoga at at noon, and they had a vegan salad for lunch. But it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the points that you measure the experience at school is very, very shallow.
Mm-hmm.
The time, I mean, and what you said is true, because do we really care enough? Because, yeah, we might, that one teacher who changed your life or changed my life does exist, and you might have been that teacher for many children.
Mm-hmm.
But if the system is broke, what do you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Because you can,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember having great teachers, but they still at the end of the class would say, hey, I'm glad we had this lovely discussion about maybe, political science and a certain thing, but you know what, you have to do that homework and memorize that part, because that's what's going to be tested in the exam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they can do, because the exam is so outdated. And even something like SATs, I mean, I hate standardized testing, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to put a child through that if you want to get them to the next level, because then your other option is homeschooling, right? And then you suddenly say, oh, you know what, you're homeschooled for 18 years of your life, but wait, you need to get a job. How do you get a job? To go through the system again, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not opposed to homeschooling at all, and I think that there's actually been a really great, I don't know if rebirth is the right word, but a lot of people are upset with the current, in the United States, the current education system, and even what happened during the pandemic,
Mm.
and how kids were treated during that, and how schools closed down and didn't support children. And then when they reopened, what a beautiful time to have come back and done things better. I
I
really
know.
hoped that, like, I thought, wow, could this be something where this horrible thing happens where the schools are shut down, but it gives them time to actually come back better and stronger, and in a more present day version of education that is beneficial to our society today versus the archaic way. That didn't happen
Mm.
for the most part. I know there's an exception to every rule. And I would be happy to hear from a listener about a great school that did that, or a great teacher. Please, like, I say that sincerely, like, let me know who they are. I do write on the Today Show, and I do write a Forbes column, and I want to write about people that are doing wonderful things in education, that are innovative and exciting. And so if you know those people, send them my way.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
There's just
Because
not, that's not the norm. The norm was, we came back, we opened up the schools, and we didn't meet the needs of the kids. And that's why you see them socially stunted. And that's why you see them behind in their learning and development and in their emotional intelligence. And so that's a problem. And so you see adults go, the school system isn't doing what it's supposed to do for my kids. I'm going to look at this homeschooling option. And so there's a lot of people that have decided to take that route. And that means some really innovative programming in homeschooling is coming out, versus maybe what people kind of think homeschooling is from like the olden days type of thing. There's really some really interesting curriculums and communities that are coming out of this desire for parents to want better for their kids, and deciding, if they're not going to give it to me, then I'm going to do it myself. Also, like, taking away school choice is ridiculous in my opinion. And so if you're going to take away all these choices, then the parents are going to leave, and they should. The hard thing there, though, is that's where you start seeing an issue with, like, socioeconomics, right? Because I'm sure there's people who wish they could homeschool their kid, but they need to go to work, and they
yeah,
got to pay the rent, and they got to get food on the table, or they got to pay the mortgage, or they got to do something. And there isn't and I want to be careful how I say this, but there isn't that maybe luxury or option for a parent to be homeschooling, especially if like you're in a single parent household. Although maybe now there's more communities that support in that way,
Mm.
but it's tough. But I'm grateful that there's so many parents that have decided that they're going to do better for their kids, or they're going to push back in the schools and they're going to start showing up to the school board meetings and say, like, this is unacceptable. We want this, we want that. I mean, that's where the change is going to happen, when the parents really use their voices. And I love seeing parents do that.